George Orwell's essay, Politics and the English Language, is striking for many reasons, not least of which is how very long he takes to get to talking about politics. The bulk of the essay, well over half, is a discussion of the decay of language, of the use of tired phrases and outworn or outright meaningless metaphors. What precisely does this have to do with politics? And how could it possibly be related to tyranny? Toward the beginning of his essay, Orwell provides us with 5 examples of the lamentable trends in language he's identified. Only one of them is political. It's from a communist pamphlet. And even this one is too innocuous to trigger even the most stalwart John Bircher. So what gives? Each of these passages, Orwell writes, has faults of its own, but quite apart from avoidable ugliness, 2 qualities are common to all of them. The first is staleness of imagery. The other is lack of precision. The writer either has a meaning and cannot express it, or he inadvertently says something else, or he is almost indifferent as to whether his words mean anything or not.
Mr. President, you've been a governor and a president, so you have a unique experience looking at it from 2 directions. What do you think tribal sovereignty means in the 21st century, and how do we resolve conflicts between tribes and the federal and state governments?
Yeah. Tribal sovereignty means that it's sovereign. You've been given sovereignty, and you're viewed as a sovereign entity.
Okay.
And therefore, the relationship between the federal government and tribes is one between sovereign entities.
Orwell compiles a catalog of swindles and perversions common in this kind of writing. So the first is dying metaphors. He distinguishes these from dead metaphors, i.e. iron resolution or heart of stone. Dead metaphors are so commonly used as to go almost unnoticed. They're more or less invisible. And like everything more or less invisible, they're not a terrible impediment to clarity. Dying metaphors, on the other hand, are a threat to meaningful expression. These are phrases that aren't in constant use. Heart, for example, seems spotted with of stone or all of my as often as it's seen alone. So heart of stone or all of my heart, these are dead. But dying metaphors, while still cliches, are used to avoid the chore of expressing what you mean. Apple of my eye is a good one. When I say someone is the apple of my eye, I mean I like them a lot, maybe more than anyone else, but I don't mean that they're as essential to me as my pupil, which is what the phrase actually means.
How are you going to get along with these people in Washington? I mean, I think you're going to win. That's a prediction I'm making. I don't know. I mean, you never just till the bell rings. But you're in a very heavily Democratic district. You're going there. I mean, you're going there. There's a time where people talk about how it's broken and it's so polarized, both of which I think are true. And you're also coming really as an outsider at a moment where I think people are watching what happened today and want to storm the gates. And you're going to actually do that. So what's your plan here?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with changing our strategy around governance. There's a lot of inside baseball and inside the beltway, as you always hear that term thrown around. But there are very few organizers in Congress, and I do think that organizers operate differently. It's a different kind of strategy, and what it is really about organizing and really thinking about that word, organizing, segmenting people, being strategic in their actions, in really bringing together a cohesive strategy of putting pressure on the chamber instead of only focusing on the pressures inside the chamber.
That's a really interesting thought.
Operators, or verbal false limbs, is the second one. What Orwell means here is the use of extra words and syllables when a simple verb will do. He gives examples of using render inoperative and militate against when you could just say break or stop.
I had a 2-week regimen of hydroxychloroquine, and I've taken it, I think, just about 2 weeks. I think it's another day. And I'm still here. I'm still here. And I tested very positively in another sense. So this morning, I tested positively toward negative, right? So no, I tested perfectly this morning.
Pretentious diction is the next one. This one is pretty self-explanatory, but his list of words, use of individual as a noun, like the individual went to the store, objective, categorical, effective, virtual, basic, primary, promote, etc., is enough to make the most scrupulous writer feel guilty. We're all guilty, surely, some of us more than others, and me more than most, of using language that sounds good without being equally careful to ensure that the word we've chosen is the correct one.
We go on offense now, and we expect our GOP leaders in D.C. to get on offense because we, the people, we realize that this is war. As I say, it is war for the solvency, the sovereignty of the United States of America. And we don't sit on our thumbs this next time when one of our own is being crucified and falsely accused of whatever the hip accusation of the day happens to be, right? Racism, sexism, whatever. Really, it's kind of Orwellian observing how that works, that rule of Saul Alinsky's, no doubt, that the left employs. Disgusting charges from the left that reverse them, for it is they who point a finger, not really, they have triple that amount of fingers pointing right back at them, revealing that they are the ones who really discriminate and divide on color and class and sex. We call them out, we don't let them get away with it then.
Next on the list is meaningless words. I think this, more than anything, defines the modern political speech. How many times do we hear words like freedom, democracy, constitutional, American, and so forth from people who hold completely contradictory views? They make us feel good, sure. They go down like ginger tea on a rainy day, but that's not all they do. Orwell identifies a far more insidious function that meaningless words fulfill.
It is that fundamental belief, I am my brother's keeper, I am my sister's keeper, that makes this country work. It's what allows us to pursue our individual dreams and yet still come together as one American family. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. Now, even as we speak, there are those who are preparing to divide us. The spin masters, the negative ad peddlers, who embrace the politics of anything goes. Well, I say to them tonight, there is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America. There is not a black America and a white America and Latino America and Asian America. There's the United States of America. The pundits like to slice and dice our country into red states and blue states, red states for Republicans, blue states for Democrats. But I've got news for them, too. We worship an awesome God in the blue states, and we don't like federal agents poking around in our libraries in the red states. We coach Little League in the blue states, and yes, we've got some gay friends in the red states. There are patriots who opposed the war in Iraq, and there are patriots who supported the war in Iraq. We are one people, all of us pledging allegiance to the Stars and Stripes, all of us defending the United States of America.
In our time, he writes, political speech and writing are largely the defense of the indefensible. Things like the continuance of British rule in India, the Russian purges and deportations, the dropping of the atom bombs on Japan can indeed be defended, but only by arguments which are too brutal for most people to face, and which do not square with the professed aims of the political parties. Thus, political language has to consist largely of euphemism, question-begging, and sheer cloudy vagueness. Defenseless villages are bombarded from the air, the inhabitants driven out into the countryside, the cattle machine-gunned, the huts set on fire with incendiary bullets. This is called pacification. Millions of peasants are robbed of their farms and sent trudging along the roads with no more than they can carry. This is called transfer of population or rectification of frontiers. People are imprisoned for years without trial, or shot in the back of the neck, or sent to die of scurvy in Arctic lumber camps. This is called elimination of unreliable elements. Such phraseology is needed if one wants to name things without calling up mental pictures of them. Consider, for instance, some comfortable English professor defending Russian totalitarianism. He cannot say outright, "I believe in killing off your opponents," when you can get good results by doing so. Probably, therefore, he will say something like this. While freely conceding that the Soviet regime exhibits certain features which the humanitarian may be inclined to deplore, we must, I think, agree that a certain curtailment of the right to political opposition is an unavoidable concomitant of transitional periods, and that the rigors which the Russian people have been called upon to undergo have been amply justified in the sphere of concrete achievement. The inflated style itself is a kind of euphemism. A mass of Latin words falls upon the facts like soft snow, blurring the outline and covering up all the details. The great enemy of clear language is insincerity. When there is a gap between one's real and one's declared aims, one turns, as it were, instinctively to long words and exhausted idioms, like a cuttlefish spurting out ink. In our age, there is no such thing as keeping out of politics. All issues are political issues, and politics itself is a mass of lies, evasions, folly, hatred, and schizophrenia. When the general atmosphere is bad, language must suffer. So, this is Orwell writing at a very dark period, and he states that languages have been corrupted as a result of dictatorship. True, no doubt. Look at any totalitarian regime and the way they change language, and more often than not, the calendar proves them guilty of such corruption. But he says that language can also corrupt thought. From our discussion, we know that this is obviously true. There's hope, though. This street goes both ways. If imprecise, outmoded, lazy language can corrupt our thinking, then its opposite can sharpen it. This isn't an argument for the King's English. Orwell makes that point clear. Stale language is part of the problem. Orwell is arguing that we should choose our words carefully. Think before you speak is a cliche, but it's also true, and it's advice, especially now, that's direly needed.